Hello Cloud Pedagogians, good to see you again in this course. Cool, now that you know how to map roles from on-premises to cloud, let me give more details about roles in the industry. Cloud computing changed the world, and with every change there are new thoughts and new mindsets. To give you an example, before the cloud, knowledge of operating network appliances was something in high demand because companies were using data centers more often and networking appliances were the core components to connect everything together. With cloud becoming the new normal, the most operations being done via API calls because that needs got less demand. But there is still a lot of foundational knowledge that can and should be learned to be better cloud professional. As I said earlier, there are no data center to manage in the cloud and everything is logically done via API calls. Of course, we are going to cover APIs in next few sessions, but that favors people who are familiar with coding and scripting languages like Bash or PowerShell scripting. That's because they can embrace the use of these API calls to do tasks for them, like performing automatic routines and creating infrastructure automations. Lot of roles are the exact same, both in the traditional IT industry and in the cloud space. What happened is that the skill sets per role had some adaptations. Again, let me circle back on the role of a network admin as an example. Installing things from scratch, cabling the patch panels, securing and understanding everything on an appliance's operating system was a daily routine for a network administrator. Nowadays, cloud services like Amazon VPC or virtual private cloud requires these admins to allocate their skills to other types of tasks like defining network topologies, managing route tables, configuring firewalls, troubleshooting connections, linking networks, and etc. The same thing happens with database administrators. Databases are an incredibly broad topic, meaning you can talk about query optimization, database installations, backups, and a gazillions of other things. And again, with the cloud making it is easier to start a database. The skills of installation database from scratch are in lower demand. But don't get me wrong, I'm not saying database administrators are less relevant. In fact, it's the very opposite. People with the data knowledge have skills that are very valuable because there is a whole set of competencies regarding how data can be used in the cloud. I'm saying that because the cloud popularized the use of different database types like NoSQL, graph database, time series database, big data technologies, and multiple database engines to choose from. The thing is, now the cloud provider is doing the heavy lifting of configuration things from scratch, meaning database administrators can now be more specialized in the other parts, such as performance tuning, data modeling, integration, data processing, and many more. Now a word about the DevOps role. Before the cloud was the new normal, companies used it to operate on the data centers. And because data centers were complex, it was pretty common to dedicate an entire team just for data center operations, also called the infrastructure team. So there was an infra team and the developer team. The communication between these teams were vital for the business. And usually when something was not right, it was very common to see one blaming to each other. Because I remember back in 2010, when I was the part of development team, we were facing always when the CPU utilization was super high right after a new feature implementation. We the developers used it to say the infrastructure machines were not that fast. And infrastructure administrators used it to fire back saying that our code was not optimized. We were saying their machines were not fast and they were saying it's our fault. Of course, we were stressed because it was our development team's fault. The servers were okay before the new feature. As you can tell, that caused friction. Friction creates silos and silos slows the things down. Evolution and slow things usually don't go well together. And because cloud makes environment provisioning simple, people started coding things for pipeline automations, code deployments, and even started managing their own environments. What I'm telling you is the rise and adoption of the DevOps culture. DevOps are people who use software development technologies to improve infrastructure management lifecycle. For the sake of simplicity, environments became smaller and very smaller. At that point, people started calling microservices. Microservices are an approach to software development where services are made of small and independent pieces that communicate with each other over very well defined APIs. Usually, these microservices are owned by teams containing DevOps and SDs or software development engineers, also sometimes called full stack developers. Full stack developers are people who can code both the front end and the back end of an application. This nomenclature came from layered applications containing front end, middle tier, and databases. To summarize our roles conversation, sometimes roles have the same name both in the cloud and in the traditional IT industry. Roles like security analyst or software developers are very similar. But in the cloud, they must be familiar with some cloud specific aspects like serverless, containers, microservices, DevOps, or even able to manage the entire environment where the code runs. Well, I think that's all I have to say for this session, but I hope to be back soon. Until then, take care with happy learnings.